Welcome to the EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Suresh Pathare, Professor Director at the BPHE Society's Center for Studies in Rural Development, Institute of Social Work and Research, Ahmednagar. We are discussing about the course on rural development, and as a part of this rural development course, we have a module on project planning and management. As the objective of this module is to understand what it means to be project planning, what are the components of project planning. We will also know the project cycle and various components involved in project planning and project management. By the end of this module, the learners will be able to understand project planning and they will be able to manage the project independently. Discussing about project planning and management is one of the very important aspects in development sector. As we are talking about the rural development and who are the partners in rural development, one is government agency and other is voluntary organizations. Whatever the agency is, government or voluntary organizations, in order to do the effective implementation of the programs, schemes, and also effectively take up the task of rural development, understanding of project planning and project management is very essential. In this module we are going to talk about this. Even though it is a temporary endeavor having defined beginning and end, undertaken to meet the unique goals and objectives, usually to bring about benefits for the rural development. The project planning is the key to successful project in planning. It guides everyone involved. Basically, planning is where you are going and how you are going to get there. So it involves the question, answer to the questions like what, why, where, how, when. In project planning phase, it is very important. When the project plans are documented, the project deliverables and requirements are defined, and the project schedule is created. Right in the beginning, you are aware that where you are going. In project planning, it is basically if you know where to go, then the next thing comes like how you will go there and what it requires to go there. So project planning answering to when, where, how comes later, and when we plan this, actually when we implement it, the management issues come. So management comes later, but then you have to plan in advance how we are going to manage the projects. Projects, whether it is governmental or projects whether it is run by and initiated by the voluntary organizations. Rural development is possible only with the right kind of planning, well planning called the half done, and therefore we need to initiate the planning. What we do in this process of project planning, we do the scope planning. Scope planning is basically what is the scope, what is our area, where we are doing, what is our target. It is basically scoping the your target. You are also doing the scope planning for how much you are going, what you are doing. So it is not more than what you can. It is not more than, or rather less than, what you expected to do. So this will give you the clear idea about how far you have to go, what is the coverage of your project, and what are the different stakeholders of the project. So it gives clarity and it helps to actually implement the project. Another important thing in the process of project planning is developing the timeline. Timeline means you where to start, how much duration you are going to give to which task, and where you end. How long is the project journey? Where is the middle? Where is the center? Where is the beginning and where is the end? Where you begin and where you terminate must be defined right in the beginning, and that will also give you clear-cut guidelines to monitor the project. Project can be monitored or checked whether you are going to the right direction with the right speed only if you have developed the timeline right in the beginning. Otherwise, endless journey if you have, you will never reach. And therefore, in rural development projects, if you have to manage it well, you need to develop right in the planning phase the timeline. Another process of project planning important component is resource planning. Whatever you plan, whatever you are planning to do, you must do it considering the availability of the resources. First, you must plan that what are the resources available, what resources needs to be obtained from here, what is locally available, what needs to be mobilized from people, what needs to be mobilized from the external agency, from where what is going to come, and only depending on the available resources or based on creating the availability of resources, you plan the program. And therefore, resource mapping and resource planning right in the beginning at the planning stage is very important. Now, when you have the resources, it includes the financial resources. Now, financial resources needs to be again planned, and we call it a budget planning. Budget planning is whatever financial resources you have available with you, how you are going to spend them, the expenditure heads, and also like timeline. You are linking it with timeline when you are going to spend how much, how we are going to keep the available resources for the entire project, or you are planning a project, entire project according to the availability of your financial resources. So these are the four important processes of project: scope planning, then developing the timeline, resource planning, and budget planning. The project proposal is important aspect of planning. In planning, developing the scope statement, goals and objective. Now, project proposal writing is itself a huge topic. We are not going into details, but in this module, we need to have the quick understanding that in the planning part, once we plan it on the paper, if we want to submit it to the agency, to somebody else, that where we can get the resources to implement the permission, or for the reason that the project is approved and we go ahead with the project, we need to get the approval, and for that we need the proposal. In the proposal, we need to develop the scope statement, goals and objectives very clearly, what we are going to achieve, where we are going to reach, where we plan to reach. So this needs to be very clearly, specifically explained and developed right in the beginning. At the beginning also, we need to very clearly define what will be the deliverable. Deliverable is basically what is going to be the outcome of the project, and along with the identifying the deliverables, creating the work breakdown structure, how it is divided, how we are going to do it, who is going to do what. So that is the important aspect of this project proposal. And then project proposal, another important aspect is identifying the activities needed to complete those deliverables that we plan to get, and networking the activities in their logical framework. So these are the important aspects of project proposal. Besides that, estimating the resource requirements for the activities. Besides that, estimating time and cost for activities. As I mentioned, that budget is part of it, and here you estimate, this is linked with your timeline and budget planning. You estimate that how much cost for each activities is required and when to do what. This is also needed to be mentioned in the project proposal. You need to mention about the developing the schedule. It is a timeline only, but then here clearly you define that where you begin and when, what is happening when. And of course, we discussed about this budgetary provisions for the project. The planning is one part, and other part is actually project management. When you are managing project, you have number of things that to be done. In this, right from the beginning, you have the fundraising and budgeting, which is the major one and which is actually the lifeline of your project. If you do not have the fund and the proper budget, you cannot go ahead with the project. So managing the project, you need to manage the fund, and in order to manage the fund, you need to raise it. Staff recruitment and development is another component. Management information system and public relation is the third component. Reporting and documentation, various reports type that we have. So these are the some of the important aspects of project management. We are going to discuss each one of them now. As I mentioned, the first one, fundraising and budget making, we already discussed a little bit, that you need to have the various activities, whether to raise the fund from government, whether to raise from the corporate social responsibility. Now that is one of the big source available for raising the fund for rural development, whether to raise it from the funding organizations. So fundraising is the first important part of your project planning, project management, and then budgeting in order to manage that fund. Staff recruitment and development, in order to manage your projects, right kind of people for the right job is very essential. Staff recruitment and development, for that, first of all, you need to get the job profile done. What kind of person you need, and for that, before that, you need to know that what is the task to be accomplished, why you need the person. So define the staff positions, their roles and responsibilities. This is the first task for managing the project effectively. If you have right kind of people, you can manage your project easily. So this is the very important aspects. Then once you define the kind of person that you need, the qualification that person needs to have, or the kind of person you need, determined by the job profile. Well, when you decide that what roles person needs to be performed, or what responsibility you have for him, what task he needs to be attend. So in order to that, you look for right kind of person, and your searching begins. And for that, you need to give the advertisement. They advertise, and you receive applications, how you manage them, how you screen them, screening and actually recruiting. You get the huge number of the applicants, and then you have to find the right kind of person, whether the person only the qualification is sufficient, but you are looking for the kind of besides the qualification and skills, whether your project is depending on your project, whether you need the person who is carrying a certain type of attitude, because that is very important. Only the skills and knowledge will not help, but you need the person with a particular kind of attitude, and for that those attitude and values you have to really look for during the interview process. And then appointment, whether it is contractual, how long that needs to be defined. Otherwise, you will not be able to manage your project. If you are not able to manage the people, you will not be able to manage the project, and you land into different kind of trouble. So appointment order, contractual, clearly needs to be mentioned here, and that is how you can effectively manage personnel. And in the project, if you are able to manage personnel well, you are able to manage the project well. And not only the once you appoint the person, the job is done, but beyond that, training and development, very important aspects. Continuous refresher. Person is trained in the field, educationally qualified is not sufficient. Person needs to be trained as per the requirement of the project. So there has to be a continuous training, not the formal training but informal training, continuous meetings and then discussions, and that is how the staff development takes place. So if project has to be successful, we need to get the right kind of persons, and once we get the right kind of person, in order to retain them, we need to continuously update them with the required skills and knowledge, and that is why training and development part is very important in this. Appraisal and promotion, everybody, whoever is hard worker must get the fruits of that, and therefore not only just recruiting them, training them, but we must have the system for appraising who is working hard, who is doing the real job, who is giving the output and who is not giving the output, whether the desired job and the responsibilities and the role is being performed as desired by your project. That needs to be appropriately appraised, and accordingly the person must get the benefits. There must be some avenues for promotion, there must be some avenues for going ahead, otherwise the person, after getting the training, after developing the project, may leave the halfway and find the other place. So that we must have inbuilt provision, that person should have that incentive to climb up the ladder. They must have some avenues, so that must be done in order to manage the projects effectively. Project completion and contract statement also must be mentioned, because when project needs to be completed, how, and then how the contracts are settled with different stakeholders. That is another important aspects of project management. The another important aspects in project management is management information system, MIS. Often the organizations, especially the voluntary organizations, are very poor in this area. And in rural development, if you are progressing in the right direction, or whether you have been able to make the dent in the situation, whether you have been able to bring the changes in the situation, you need to keep the record updated, and also for that develop your own MIS system, whereby a system that provides information needed to manage the organizations effectively. It is now the MIS systems are created as per your need and as per project. You should be able to get the right kind of information at the right time. So how you manage that is depending on the system. It is planned system of the collection, processing, storage and dissemination of data in the form of information needed to carry. Now this information entry has to be easy. It should not be more time consuming, otherwise you work a little in the field and you spend more time in creating the reports. That should not be there. So it also, like, it should be user friendly, it should not be time consuming. At the same time, it should not be very sketchy that you don't get the right kind of information. So the right kind of reports, and the MI system is mixture of the qualitative and quantitative information, user friendly, and whereby storage is easier, processing is easier, and also as and when needed you are able to retrieve the information easily and appropriately. In MIS system, further need to discuss that management information systems are regarded to be the subset of the overall internal controls procedure in organizations. The whole monitoring system depends on the how MIS you have, because it covers the application of people when you are recruiting them, documents, technologies, procedures used by management, and accounts for the smooth running of the project. Because overall the monitoring systems are determined by your MIS system. It helps you to really manage the project well, and the best planning is done only when you have the best monitoring system also. Another component that we are discussing is reporting and documentation. Reporting and documentation, activity report, financial reports. There are number of reports to be prepared in the project. Many times these reports are required by the funding agency. These reports are required by the government. These reports are required by the agency, but at the same time these reports are required to be kept and preserved by the implementing agency, the organization that implements the project. We need to create different reports. Whatever we do, that activities, the meetings that we conduct, for the every activity and programs we need to have the separate reports, and also depending on the requirement of the funder, you may have to create the reports. But the most important report, the financial report, which is in the form of the budget that you have created and the audit report that you do at the end. Besides that, how you spend that money, which heads, whether the allocation is being followed. So this needs to be done. Activity report is mainly related with the project activities, whereas financial report is concerned with the details of the cost incurred for the project activities. And these both are interlinked with each other. They are not, although separate document, they are linked with each other. If you are conducted activity, there must be reflected in the financial report, and if you are spend money, it must be reflected in the activity report. If you have already incurred the expense and that there is no activity conducted, that shows there is some problem. Reporting and documentation, again, we create process report, narratives and summary reports. Process report is like what we are doing, how we are going. It is qualitative reports. And summary report is at the end, we need create a brief report. Sometimes organizations has to provide the detailed process to the stakeholder with minute details of the implemented activities. Then we need to produce a detailed report. Sometimes summary report is the document important event of the project activity. So both these reports are important, either summary report or the process report, depending on the organization. Now let me summarize what we discussed in this whole module. As we discussed that voluntary action or voluntary organizations and government organizations, these both organizations are involved in rural development. However, in rural development, voluntary organizations often take up projects, and these projects are funded by either government or the funding organizations or a corporate. How we take up the project, how we manage it, and how we achieve the objectives, this is determined by how you are planning and managing that. And therefore, we discussed in this module that how planning and management are important for rural development. Project planning is to be done right in the beginning. It defines that what you are going to do, defines that what you are going to achieve. It defines that how you are going, how you are getting the resources, how you are spending, budget allocation, resource mapping. This is what all you do in the right in the beginning as the planning phase. Once you plan well, when you begin the project management, in the planning itself, you also plan for the fundraising. And once you do that, right in the beginning, when you start the initiating the project in the implementation stage, you do the various activities for the fundraising and budgeting. You do various activities for the recruitment, and as I said, a right kind of person for the right kind of job. Not only knowledge and skills, but also the attitude. The person which is fitting in the culture of your organization. Person who is able to continue and complete the desired goal of the project. Very important. Recruiting them, training them as and when required, appraisal of them, then also like avenues for promotion. These are some of the important aspects to manage the people. So manage the fund, manage the program, manage the people, and also having the system for creating, preserving and procuring the record in the form of various reports. MIS system, we discussed that how it is important for the projects. So and we also discussed that the various components of project planning. In order to know more about this, you can always read about the project planning and management. Especially, you can visit the see the e-text in this, and I'm sure you will be able to take it forward. Thank you very much.